Good morning. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for joining us. It is April Fool's Day, but reason for doing this has nothing to do with that. 4 years ago, the Democrat-led House and Senate passed a budget that overspent in inflated revenue estimates and used some other gimmicks that eventually led to one of our largest budget deficits in history, and we don't want to be fooled again. So we're here today to talk about some of the ideas that the Republicans have concerning the budget that is coming before us on Wednesday. Talking about some of the, what we consider to be overspending and the maybe not highly the right word, but inflated revenue estimates, and where we're raising taxes and fees and just growing government at a rate that we can't afford right now. And I would like to thank all the members of the House Republican Finance Committee for their efforts in doing the best they can, working within this budget and the confines that we have asked them to do. And with that, I will ask Representative Kirk to step forward and give some of his perspective.
Thank you, Gene. Good morning. It's unfortunate for me to have to say this, but it appears to me and many of my Republican colleagues that this budget is balanced on the backs of the poor and on the backs of small business. There are an even dozen list of what we would consider to be significant problems with this budget. First, it downshifts millions of dollars, perhaps as many as $7 million, to county taxpayers. In other words, the budget is balanced on the back of these county and local property taxpayers. Secondly, there is a moratorium on school building aid. New school buildings to the tune of $7.2 million will not be funded. Thirdly, it expands Medicaid. And although this costs $1.3 million, in this budget, it runs the risk of costing tens of millions of dollars after 2017, perhaps as much as $85 million. And this in the face of overwhelming public opposition to the ACA, or what it's colloquially known as Obamacare. Fourth, this budget relies on very rosy or inflated revenues, as many as $31 million compared to more prudent estimates. The budget imposes a moratorium on new charter schools, which is something that provides choice to so many students who find the traditional public school education less attractive than public charter school education. It repeals the education tax credit, which would have given up to 2,500 low and middle income families an opportunity that is available to their wealthier peers to go to private schools of their choice. It intentionally underfunds two areas of the budget, things dealing with indigent legal assistance and with the Department of Corrections overtime, and provides a way around this through the Fiscal Committee to spend monies not otherwise appropriated. It diverts about $27 million from the Highway Fund, more than current statute requires, to fund Department of Safety activities, including troopers. It takes $13 million away from businesses, mostly small businesses, in credits and benefits that they would otherwise get by suspending these for the next biennium. Small business without these credits is going to be less likely to expand, less likely to create the new jobs that will grow our economy. There are 40,000 New Hampshire folks looking for work, and this budget does not facilitate any of that. There's an increase in the gas tax in this budget of 12 cents. Who pays that? Disproportionately, it's a regressive tax. The same thing is true of the tobacco tax increases. It's a regressive tax that falls primarily on the backs of the poor. And finally, there is a section in this bill that allows the governor carte blanche to raid over up to 300 dedicated funds without limitation as to dollar amount or the kind of fund in order to balance an expected 2013 deficit. This is an extraordinary delegation of legislative authority to the governor that in the past, to the extent it's been done, has been limited in dollar amount or specific fund that was to be rated. But this is carte blanche authority, and I think it's extremely inappropriate. So we have an even dozen areas where the current budget, in effect, is balanced on the back of the poor and small business, and I think that's very bad public policy. There are two others who I would like to introduce to speak to this. The first is Representative Ober.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, I'm Lynn Ober. I also sit on House Finance. Every New Hampshire family has to live within its means. I do not have the opportunity of going to my neighbors and saying, I'd like $1 million, I want a Ferrari. I have to live with what I earn. The state needs to do the same. House Finance Chairman has been quoted in the press as being against the $80 million that the governor put in the budget for her casino. However, House Finance Democrats left that $80 million in the budget and spent every dime of it, even though they say they will not vote for it in the House. Where will we get the money to fill that hole? As we watched the budget unfold, we saw many things happen that appeared to be items that the majority party wished to hide. Representative Kirk just mentioned to you the underfunding of the corrections overtime line. In 2012, corrections spent $5 million on overtime. In 2013, this year, corrections has told us that they are on a spending rate to spend $5.5 million in the overtime line. And yet this budget only gives them $3.5 million. How do you cover that? You put a section into House Bill 2 that says corrections may go to fiscal and ask for additional money. And suddenly $2 million that you said was balanced in your budget is a $2 million hole in each of the 2 years. We worked the last 2 years on 2 programs that have been stopped under the John Lynch administration. School construction was one of those. We knew we could no longer continue funding the program the way we were because we couldn't afford it. We worked with the department and both branches passed a new construction bill that would have gone into effect in 2015. All the money that would have been allocated to new school construction has been stripped out of the budget. The Democrats will tell you that they have a provision that says if there's a life safety need, you may get the money. In actual fact, that provision was put in by Governor Lynch when he put the moratorium on school construction aid. To date, money has not been spent under that provision because a fire marshal must certify. The House earlier this year passed a bill for the White Mountain Regional Vocational Center for a $7.7 million school construction project that they said had life safety issues, but that their fire marshal would not certify. So there's a need out there, and it's been stopped. The other program that was stopped were the state grants that went to repay the wastewater treatments, the landfill closures, and the sewage plants. The governor proposed 60% of the funding for 2015. Representative Karen Umberger has worked on a new plan to fund this for more than 2 years. And while she does not have a complete new project together and the agency continues to work with her, she was able to work with finance to get that fully funded in 2015. But when they fully funded it, they were unwilling to make the cuts to make it balanced. And instead, as you heard, will raid the dedicated funds. Every dedicated fund has got a line item contingency that says, cut them, don't cut me. Well, now that cutting is going to be done behind the scenes without the honest scrutiny that is done when those cuts are made in the budget. Thank you. And I believe Representative Ken Weiler is here and has a few comments.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm Representative Ken Weiler of Kingston. We have more government than we can afford. The government burden is responsible for the struggling economy that we have before us. 2 years ago, we made some progress in cutting the budget and in encouraging more efficiency in state government. We did not increase taxes. In fact, we were able to reduce a couple of them and improve the business climate. This budget increases 2 major taxes by record amounts, cigarettes and gasoline. And it cancels the pro-business improvements that we had passed. And for one who is very proud of the accomplishments of charter schools, it continues a moratorium on opening any new ones for 2 more years. There is no evidence that those who were receiving services from our state in the past 2 years were harmed or were denied any services. And many of our departments are increasing their efficiencies. So I leave you with the question, who benefits from increasing the size of state government by 10%? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll open up to questions.